Okay, hi all Scorpionites. Before we start, I'd just like to say this is my very first video log vlog. So go easy on me. The video and the sound should both be up to scratch, but the presentation might be a bit lacking compared to some of the pros you see on YouTube. So bear with me, but it should be okay. You should be able to follow it along. Right, my name's Tom. I've been a Scorpion owner now for about 11 years. During that 11 years, I've never renewed the fuel pipes. The car is 21 years old, and as far as I know, it's all the original pipes. I've regularly looked at them, and none of them have shown any sign of cracking or anything. But about 4 weeks ago, took the car, filled it up with fuel to the brim, put it in the garage overnight, and the following day the garage stunk of petrol, and sure enough there was a few drips underneath it the following morning, round about where the red and blue filter is, which you'll see later. So I knew fuel tubing or something had gone. It was time to renew it, so I thought I might as well renew it all. Now obviously you've got to drain the fuel tank to do so, and I don't know whether you know or not, but the Scorpion, to renew the spark plugs, you've got to drop the fuel tank on the left hand side. You don't have to fully remove it, but you have got to drop it on the left hand side. So since it's 11 years ago since I renewed the spark plugs, I thought I might as well do that as well. I renewed the spark plugs 11 years ago. Took it round to a guy I just met as soon as I met it on the forum. As soon as I bought the car on the forum, called Pete Allen. Now he's all the forum members will know Pete well. Most of the owners. If you've never met Pete, he's very, very knowledgeable on all things mechanical on the Grinnall, and he's a great entertainer. At night, having various acts that he does at the Christmas do's and the holidays we've been on. If you ever get a chance to meet Pete, do so, or you're missing out on a treat. So like I said, we did do the plugs 11 years ago, so it's run like a dream since. I know you're supposed to redo them more often than that, but it is a big job dropping the tank and that, so never saw a need since it was still running great. But like I say, since the tank is drained off for this job, it was a good chance to renew them. Now the fuel tube in itself, there is two different bores. You've probably seen this diagram of the fuel layout for the Grinnell. It is a bit daunting. There seems to be lots of pipes, and there is filters and pumps and things. But it's pretty straightforward, and it'll be obvious when you watch the video. Now there's two different bores of pipe. The high pressure stuff is got an internal bore of 7 to 8 millimeters, and the low pressure tubing has got an internal bore of 12 to 13 millimeters. On that diagram, it is in imperial, but they're the metric sizes. Now all my high pressure stuff was this non-braided variety, and it looks still in really good condition. It's tough stuff. It's really hard to squeeze. You can hardly squeeze it, and it's got the fibres running through. You can just see it there. I think the fibres running through the rubber to reinforce it. And like I say, it's supple. There's no cracks in it. It looked as good as new. The low pressure side was the side that had gone, and this is the low pressure side. Now that's a braided. It's got an outside fabric braid on it, and that's the one that had gone, the low pressure one. Now I've renewed all that, and I've also all the high pressure stuff I've renewed as well, but I've also used a braided one for that. Like I said, the unbraided one did look slightly better quality. For this braided one was available at my local shop, car accessory shop. It is rated for high pressure fuel, high pressure situations, and it's it's made for the job, so hopefully it should be okay. I was advised as well by a couple of the owners to renew to not use Jubilee clips with the spiral groove. It had Jubilee clips on, they've been on 21 years, no problem. So I used a couple of some of them for the low pressure because the clips that I got, the new clips I got, wouldn't fit. But I got these new clips, and they are purpose-made petrol pipe clamps, and you can see that they're solid, not spiraled like a Jubilee clip. So it's probably going to be worth your while renewing them as well. A couple of the infos on that, the torque of the spark plugs, I've got from this book, the Climber Manual. If you ever get a chance to get one of these on eBay, do so. They're pretty dear, they're 20, 25 quid, something like that. But you can see how thick they are. There's absolutely tons of information on the engine, gearbox and rear drive from the early K series bikes, the 1000, the 1100, the 1200. So, like I said, this video is pertaining to before the K40 type, the older types. But the Climber Manual is a really good book to get hold of. So that's it. Without further ado, let's get on to the video, and I'll catch you at the end. So that's the fuel diagram. You may want to do a screen grab of that and print it off and have it by your side as you're going through it. This is my tiny garage. I've cleared it out all at the front. I've got the scorpion as far forward as I can with the nose cone off, so I could push it back onto that ramp. And then I've got the front two wheels up on axle stands. It's just given me enough to get my big belly under it, and as you can see at the back, I can just about shut the door. If you had a pit or ramps, it'd be a lot easier. So there's the big pair of grips and silicone spray that I'll be using a bit later on to try and get the fuel filler hose off. It's pretty stubborn to get off. There, the that's the weir tank. That's known as the weir tank. There's the stubborn filler hose. That'll be removing to drop the entire tank. You don't have to do that, but I'm doing it because I want the whole tank out just to check everything. I thought it might be easier getting out of it by twisting that fitting, the petrol cap itself, but even with all the screws out, it wouldn't turn, so that must be stuck with mastic to the fiberglass of the body. So this is your weir tank here. The front pipe of the weir tank is connected to the low pressure hose, which is here. This goes to the low pressure pump. That's the one that goes when you turn the ignition. It comes from that top fitting there, from under the car, through that up here, back into the weir tank to fill that back up. We'll go through the underneath pipes later on. But here's the other side, pipe from the weir tank, and that comes along and it goes there under the air filter box. You need to take the air filter box and the air filter out, and it looks like it goes to the other side of the fuel rail. That's the fuel rail there at the front, the square section box that the tube is going to. You think that was just going to that connection there, which I've got off, but it isn't. It goes to a pressure relief valve underneath the airbox. When you do pull that pipe off, there's quite a bit of fuel pressure still left in, so there is about an egg cup full of, or a thimbleful or whatever, of fuel spurts out under high pressure. So I did, of course, take the battery out, which you'll see in a second. I remove the battery because I don't want any sparks or anything bursting into flames. So that's your high pressure fuel line from that side of the fuel rail, arrowed. That goes under the car, past the fuel sender unit. That's the fuel sender unit, and it goes to that filter there. Now that isn't needed. Even Mark Grinnall himself, after discussion on the forum, has said we've just no need for that. That's the second one down line of the high pressure pump, and it just isn't needed. So leave that out when you put it back. Now this pipe going under the airbox, that's the one that from the top of the weir tank goes to, as you can see, that side of that thing there. Now that thing there looks like a filter, but it's actually a pressure relief valve. So it looks like it's that pipe coming out the other side, but until you take your airbox off, and then you see it goes to that valve itself. Now there's just where the arrow is, there's a little pipe comes out the side of that, and that is the pipe which feeds the other side of the fuel rail. You'll need a 19mm spanner to get that out. So here's that valve out. Like I say, you've no chance in renewing that pipe, that sideways pipe, until you get the valve out. So a 19mm spanner is that nut there. Take that whole valve out, put your new pipe on first. You can see it's quite a tight right angle. When I put the new pipe on, it was a much more gradual turn, which made it a lot easier to get on. You'll see that later on with the new pipes on. So a bit of hammer-ash and catching your hand under the airbox. It's a bit tight under there. So wear gloves or sleeves, not like I didn't. Right, these are the straps that hold your tank on. You know, it's just held on with these aluminium straps padded out with rubber. You only need to take the 2 bolts out underneath where they go into the chassis cross member. You can bend them back and the whole tank will drop down. So you have to remove that filler, 50mm filler nozzle pipe, but you'll find that the whole tank then comes down pretty easy. Just take all the parts off the top of the tank. I wanted to take it out and give it a good examination and the chassis behind, so I removed the entire tank, as you'll see. Then got it out the garage and give it a good clean. There it is, dropped to the floor, quite dirty obviously after 21 years in there. There it is, all cleaned up outside. Just used some bike cleaning spray. No water, I didn't want any water in the tank. Some tiny bits of like rust from the chassis. It's aluminium, so it's not rusty aluminium, but I thought where they were, I cleaned it all up. I thought I'll put some aluminium tape over it. I had some proper metal aluminium tape. Check, if you have got any, check it is metal, because I did have a roll on the shelf. Looked metallic, just like that, but it was actually plastic. So I used proper metal alloy tape just to put over there, give it a bit more protection from any rust from the chassis. Once I'd done all that, I wire brushed and painted all the chassis with all the exposed bits with metal paint. I recommend Aldi or Lidl's paint. It's only £5 for a litre, way cheaper than Hammerite, and it goes on a bit smoother. It's not as gloopy as Hammerite, much better value. And then I coated it with new rubber as before on the square section and the round section, some rubber padding that the tank goes against. Now these are the spark plugs. Obviously I decided to change the spark plugs. They've been in 11 years, these existing ones, so if you are changing the spark plugs, now's the time to do it. Remember to number all the caps 1 to 4, so you don't get mixed up going when you're putting them back. They're the caps. There's one of the plugs out of the hole. They were very slack. It surprised me how slack they were, almost only just hand tight. So it must have, over the 11 years I've been in, just slowly undone. Anyway, there's all the info on the plugs, the recommended plugs for each engine. That's from the direct from the climber manual. I'll put the torque as well, the recommended torque on screen. I should say that now. For some reason, number one plug cap was an absolute pig to remove. The others came off great. Number one, I had to put this steel cable in. Looks like the inner cable of a pushback. It's actually a gas fire fixing cable. I'm an ex-gas fitter, but any sort of steel cable would do. And I had to put that through that hole, and then through the little gas fire fitting there, and tighten that screw and literally pull it out. No matter how hard I pulled on my grips attached to that tag, it just would not come off. So you may find the same thing, but tons of WD and sort of like wind it out on a steel cable managed to actually get the plug cap off. Okay, now when I was videoing the removal of all the pipes, I did forget to video the removal of the low pressure bit that was actually leaking round about the red and blue filter. That pipe was sodden. All the outside braiding was sodden with petrol, so I'm assuming it had gone porous along its length. It might have just had a pinhole in it or something, but I couldn't find an actual split in it or anything. But it was soggy, so I just removed it and slung it. But I did forget to video that bit. But this next part of this video runs through all the pipes after they've been fitted, and the route they take to everywhere, and it will show the red and blue filter and the high pressure fuel pump position. So hopefully it'll be pretty obvious after watching this next bit. So this is the final run through. All the new pipes are in. It's the final run through where all the pipes connect to. That's the you can just see the fuel filter up to the square pump. So this is the big stub out of the bottom of the tank. This is your low pressure pipe, 12 or 13 mil internal diameter. This was the pipe further along that was leaking, that started the whole process on mine. I've used a similar sort of braided pipe, so I don't know its lifespan, but it goes from there, from that big stub of the bottom tank, under your chassis, and the first thing it comes to is this red filter here. It's round about here that had the leaks, so I don't know which bit it was, but this red filter here, this comes apart and there's a separate replaceable filter element inside it. It's just held on with that strap. There's two brass stubs each side that the pipe goes onto, so take that strap off. You can get a spanner on the red bit and the blue bit and undo the whole thing. So this is it in bits. There's a rubber washer, black rubber washer in there, so make sure you don't lose that. That goes against the hole side, the side of the filter with the hole in. That's the old filter on the right, the new filter on the left. I got that off Jane, one of the other Scorpion owners, or ex-Scorpion owner, sent it me a while ago. So that's a new filter ready to go in. There's an O-ring on the blue bit. You just tighten them all up and that's your filter done. If you haven't got a new filter element, just back wrench your old one. So that's it, strapped back in place now. So you can either back flush that or take it all apart and just wash your... It looked pretty good, my old element, but I did have the new ones sent to me by Jane, so I thought I might as well put them in. So from there, it then heads off to the next thing in line, which is your high pressure fuel pump. Now there's nothing to do to these fuel pumps. There's no filter inside them. There's no maintainable things inside. I believe they're quite a bit of money, about 100 quid or something. So It's just a matter of renewing the pipe to it, cleaning it up maybe. So it's low pressure to it, and then after that it goes down to the smaller bore. So it's like the big bore into it, 13mm internal diameter. All the rest of the pipe now is 8mm internal diameter. I've still used the braided variety. As I mentioned before, I think the old pipe that came off was probably better quality than the new pipe I put on. Looking at it, but I'd already bought it. I was assured it was the same, but it looks slightly thinner. But so be it. So the new pipe is it is high pressure, but it's braided. So the new pipe's on anyway. So after that high pressure fuel pump, it then went along under the chassis, where on the left hand side, just before it comes out in the boot, was the filter we mentioned before. Big, chunky, size of a Coke can, high pressure filter. Well, with much discussion with Peter and other owners and Mark Grinnall himself, that's the filter there, with Mark Grinnall himself, he said there's just no need for that. The fuel's already filtered as it comes from both the pumps, before both the pumps, so there's just no need for that. It's just another reason for something to leak later on, so leave that out, or put it in if you want. So it then comes back up in up through the boot section. Obviously tie wrap it out of the way so it's not flopping around. Get it tucked as neatly as possible out of the way. I did all that later on after filming this. So comes up out of the boot section and across. See the tank looking all nice and shiny now back in. Tie wrap it under there. I shall do that later on. That comes across and goes there to this side, the rear side of the fuel rail. New clip on it there. So that's that there. Now the other side of the fuel rail, that's the tricky bit with the pressure reducing valve and that. So you remember from before when we took that valve out, it had a stub of high pressure pipe with a very tight right angle bend on that went to this part of the fuel rail. Well, it was really too tight. It was okay on the old pipe, but I just could not get as tight a bend of that on this. So I just let it through there. It's a much milder sweeping bend that comes along there, and that's the bit that goes under the airbox. Again, this is where you get all your arms and hands cut to bits. So that goes round that stub there and attaches to the sideways stub coming off that pressure relief valve just behind there. So you've no chance of getting that on without getting the actual pressure relief valve out with that 90mm nut holding it on the bracket. The other pipes you can see above are just air pipes from the air filter box. So then it heads back that way over here to the front pipe of the weir tank. Again, new clip on there. That's that one to the forwardmost of them two pipes on the weir tank. And don't forget, as it goes under there are some little tiny tubes and some sort of air pipe on this injection manifold there. Make sure they're on. There's 4 of them. You'll just see one arrowed shortly. That little brass stub there is like some sort of air pipe on top of the injectors. Pushes over there, just where the arrow is. Make sure they're pushed fully onto that stub. I didn't renew the clips. They were tiny little crimped on clips. I didn't renew them. They were quite a tight fit, but it will come loose as you're thrutching around taking the airbox off. So once you've got the bottom bit of your airbox and your air filter back in place, and you've finished all the pushing about, check them too. Then 4 little stubs are pushed on. Put the brass bit into that pipe there. There's a couple of pipes on the airbox. Just check they're all still connected, because they can quite easily come off. It's a bit hard to see, but there are 4 of them behind there. So then that was the forward pipe. As we said before, onto the tank. Now the rear pipe here comes off the rearmost of the 2 top tubes. That's the weir tank, and it goes to this side of this pump. Again, this is a pump that does that noise when you turn the ignition on. That's a pump that pumps it from the main bit of tank into that weir tank. So that attaches to the left hand side of there. And then the other side, which is the inlet, that goes down under the chassis to this filter. To this other filter. Again, that's a sealed filter. I just back flushed it. Seemed pretty clean. I painted it black. It was a bit rusty. And there's just a short stub of pipe goes onto that outlet of the tank. So along that, through that filter into the low pressure side, and then that pumps it up that part there. Now this one, I put a new one on there, even though it's just an air vent pipe. It is the bigger bore, again, of the 2, and I had plenty of that left over, so I renewed that. It's some sort of air vent from the filler. It'll be when you're filling it up to stop it clugging around. That goes over there, and again connects to that big stub. Again, this is the big bore pipe, 12-13mm internal diameter. Goes over to that one there. Now this pipe here at the front, I didn't swap this pipe. This is all just an air overflow, air vent pipe. It's totally open at the other end. They reckon you have to loop it. It was looped. It's always been looped since I got the car, so that's the way it stayed. Loop it there, and then that just goes up. Like I said, I didn't renew this at all. It all looked in pretty good. All this non-braided pipe all looked in pretty good condition, as good as new. So really didn't need renewing, even though I have done most of it. But I didn't renew this one because it is just and that, I believe, is a one-way. It's not a filter again. You can't get in it. There's nothing to take apart. I believe it's a one-way valve, a one-way air valve, and that goes along behind all that, and then it just dangles in midair Just that it is just an air vent pipe, and that's it. Okay, well, that's the end of the video. I hope you managed to stick with it and not fall asleep, and I hope it was of some help. Before you fill it up and start, though, and start the engine, before you fill the tank, leave the bottom pipe, the low pressure pipe from the very bottom of the tank, the big bore one, to the inlet of the red and blue filter. Leave that off and just put a funnel in the end of that and pour a pint or so, pint, maybe 2 pints of petrol down that to prime that pipe. You want that pipe full of petrol right to the red and blue filter, and the filter filled, and the bit out of that filter to the high pressure fuel pump, and that filled if possible. So jiggle the fuel pump around, try and get petrol into that before you start the engine. They say that's how you should do it. Prime all them lines, because you don't want to run that high pressure pump dry. So I did that, loosened a couple of clamps near the filter and the pump, made sure there was petrol coming out of there, and retightened them, and then put the pipe back on the bottom of the tank. When you fill your tank from your jerry can, just stick a gallon or so in. Pointless filling it to the brim until you've checked underneath for leaks and all your joints. So I just stick a gallon in or so. It started within about 3 or 4 turns of the starter, and ran like a dream. After that, I checked all the joints thoroughly under the air filter box and everything, and then filled the tank up to the brim, and it's been fine ever since. So I hope this video's been of use to you if you're contemplating doing this. And so if I could do it in my tiny little garage and limited skills, anybody can do it. So I hope to meet some of you at any future meets in 2019 when it's a bit warmer, and hope to see you then. Bye for now.